Hello, this is Susan. The photograph you are looking at is of my mother, Margaret Pomeranz. In the early 1940s, she was a rising star in the opera world who performed under the name of Margaret Roy. My mother sang with many great opera stars of the time, including Jerome Hines and Robert Merrill. This photograph is of Merrill holding me as a child. Here are some reviews of her performances from old newspaper clippings that we discovered. From the San Francisco Call Bulletin, Thursday, April 1st, 1943. In Gilbert and Sullivan's The Gondoliers, Margaret Roy has her full inning as the Queen-elect. Miss Roy, the Mikado's bo-peep, reveals a soprano voice of well-rounded qualities and volume and acting talent of no mean caliber. In Gilbert and Sullivan's Ruddigore, Margaret Roy was a perfect Mad Margaret. At all events, Mad Margaret is an eminently operatic creation and takes an eminently operatic singer. The Boston Company is particularly fortunate in having so able a vocalist as Miss Roy for this and other roles. Here are excerpts from a newspaper interview in 1937. If you are a Gilbert and Sullivan fan, you have doubtless visited the St. James Theatre, where the Boston Comic Opera Company has been adroitly presenting revivals of the Savoy operas these last few weeks. Such being the case, you are well aware of Margaret Roy, the girl who sings the Admiral's favorite cousin in Pinafore, giggles with the other two little maids of the Mikado, and more recently is one of the Major General's daughters in Pirates of Penzance. What you may not know, however, is that a November evening in Boston last fall marked young Miss Roy's first appearance on the professional stage. Margaret was born and brought up in Brooklyn and has lived most of her 21 years at 1334 Eastern Parkway. She has aimed at a musical career since her aunt started her on the piano at the age of 8. At PS 109, she led the school orchestra and did the same thing later at Washington Irving High School, along with soloing for the Glee Club. Then she tried 2 years at Columbia to specialize in languages, but had to give that up because her courses interfered with vocal lessons from Sam Margolis. Quote, I heard that the Schuberts wanted a soprano for their Boston company. Mr. Lee gave me an audition and then sent me to Mr. J.J. The next thing I knew, I was on the train for Boston with the score of The Gondoliers in my hand, assigned to the lead role of Casilda. The worst of it was I had to learn it practically overnight, and I'd never seen a Gilbert and Sullivan opera in my life. When we were in Boston, I spent every waking moment learning new parts. I have to be able to take any soprano role in our repertoire at a minute's notice, as well as knowing my own. Now that we're here, I have a 2-hour voice lesson again every morning and then rehearsals for our next program. I get home to Brooklyn about 5 and get in another hour of practice. By the time I have dinner, there are just about enough minutes left to get back for the evening show. Boys? Margaret has no time for them either. Messrs. Gilbert and Sullivan provide all the romance she wants at the moment. She would love, however, to play in some of the romantic operettas like The Vagabond King and Firefly. She'd like to do radio too, and maybe later, when she's ready for it, a concert. An ambitious girl, Margaret. Quote, but I'm leaving all that up to the Schuberts. They've given me my first big chance, and whatever they advise, I'm going to stick to. Here are some additional photographs of my mother in performance that we recently uncovered. And finally, one last sentence from the playbill at the St. James Theatre, Who's Who in the Cast, Margaret Roy. One afternoon, while still in high school, she took unauthorized leave from school and astonished parents, schoolmates, and not the least, herself, by turning up as the principal singer of the elaborate Radio City Music Hall stage show. My mother also volunteered to entertain the troops overseas during World War II. This is a Western Union telegram sent to my mother in March of 1943 by a prominent New York City attorney, informing her that he was contacting the famous film producer, Sam Goldwyn, on her behalf. The story goes that soon after my father met my mother and heard her sing for the first time, he was so mesmerized, he spilled his glass of wine all over the floor. Although my father loved music, he never felt comfortable in my mother's musical crowd. Here they were with various luminaries in the background, including Robert Merrill and their famous vocal teacher, Maestro Samuel Margolis, standing directly behind my mother. Not long after their marriage, my mother gave up her career, a decision she grew to regret. When I was a teenager, I once came upon some of her recordings and heard her young, glorious voice for the first time. When she found me listening to her singing, she took the recordings away. I never heard them again. I assume she destroyed them in an act of frustration.